There is a particular kind of fear that does not announce itself with noise. It arrives quietly, the way cold air enters a room through a gap you never noticed. It settles in the chest. It tightens around ordinary moments. The morning before a difficult conversation, the silence after a decision is made, the breath held waiting for something to slip away. Most people call this anxiety. But if you stay with it long enough, if you press your attention into its center rather than turning away, you find something more precise underneath. It is not the fear of pain. It is the fear of losing something you have already decided belongs to you. And that is where the Roman citizen enters the story. He is unnamed. He is not a general, not a senator, not a philosopher whose writings survived the centuries. He is a man who built something over the course of decades, a trade, a reputation, a household, and now stands at the edge of what he cannot control, convinced that if any of it falls, something essential in him falls with it. He is standing at the end of a dark pier, salt air around him, water moving beneath him in the black. He cannot see where the ocean ends. He only knows what is behind him, everything he worked for, everything he called his own. And in his hands, whether he knows it or not, he is already holding a scale. On one side, impulse, grip tighter, defend, resist, fight what cannot be fought, attach the self to the outcome. On the other side, virtue, see clearly, judge honestly, act from principle, release what was never fully yours to hold. The Stoics did not write about this man because he was exceptional. They wrote about him because he was everyone. The first teaching, ownership is an illusion, we invented. Epictetus was not born free. He was owned by another, man. And yet he arrived at a conclusion that his owner never did. Nothing external belongs to us in any permanent sense. What the world gives, the world recalls. The only question is how we respond when the recall arrives. He wrote that some things are in our power and some are not. The list of things in our power is short, remarkably short. It includes your judgments, your intentions, your chosen responses. That is nearly all. Everything else, the house, the title, the relationship, the health of the body, the approval of other people, sits in a different category entirely. It was always conditional. It was always temporary. It was always, in some precise philosophical sense, borrowed. The fear of loss gains its power from a single error in thinking, the belief that these borrowed things are possessions. Once that belief takes root, every tremor in the external world feels like a personal attack on the self. The man on the pier does not fear the ocean. He fears the revision of his own identity, but the scale he is holding has already registered the imbalance. Impulse weighs more when it is fed by attachment. Virtue weighs more when it is fed by clarity. The second teaching, the scale does not lie. Marcus Aurelius returned in his private notebooks to a specific practice. When something troubled him, and as Emperor of Rome, much troubled him, he would describe it plainly. Stripped of the emotional decoration the mind naturally applies. Not the loss of something precious, but the ending of a temporary arrangement. Not betrayal, but a person acting according to their own judgment, separate from his hopes. Not catastrophe, but an event with causes unfolding in time. This is not detachment in the cold, indifferent sense. Marcus loved his children. He mourned them when they died. He felt the weight of loss genuinely and deeply. But he returned again and again to accurate description as a form of discipline. The scale works only when you stop placing your identity on one side of it. When the unnamed Roman citizen grips what he has built and says, "This is me," the scale tips instantly. Every threat to the thing becomes a threat to the self. Every uncertainty becomes an emergency. The fear has no ceiling because the attachment has no limit. But when he can stand at the pier and say, "This is something I have worked on, something I have cared for, something that has been in my custody for a time," the scale can move again. Virtue becomes possible. Clear judgment becomes possible. He cannot control the ocean. He can control where he places his weight. The third teaching, Seneca's rehearsal. Seneca recommended a practice that many people find uncomfortable when they first encounter it. He suggested spending time, regularly, imagining the loss of what you value, not as an act of pessimism, not as a kind of self-torture, but as a way of familiarizing the mind with what it would rather not examine. He called it premeditation of adversity. The Romans called it premeditatio malorum, The exercise is simple and disorienting in equal measure. Hold in your mind the realistic possibility that the thing you are gripping today may not be there tomorrow. Your health, your income, your position, the people you love. Do not flinch from it. Let the mind rest in that possibility long enough to discover something important. The discovery is this: you are still here. The thinking, choosing, responding part of you is still present. The self that the Stoics identified as the only truly owned thing continues to function, even in imagination, even inside the worst version of the future. The man on the pier has spent years refusing to stand at that edge in his mind. And so when the ocean grows restless and the water rises, the fear arrives with full force, unannounced, because he never practiced receiving it. Seneca's answer to the fear of loss is not courage in the popular sense. It is familiarity. Walk toward the imagined loss slowly, in quietness, before life forces you to run toward it. The scale becomes easier to read when you have handled it before. The fourth teaching: what you actually possessed. There is a passage in Marcus Aurelius that stops most readers who encounter it carefully. He observes that when you lose a child, or a friend, or a great possession, what has actually happened is that it has been returned. Not taken, returned. This word matters enormously. To take implies that something rightfully yours has been removed. To return implies that the arrangement was always one of custody, not ownership. The child was given to your care. The friendship was a shared construction between two separate people. The wealth was assembled from materials and circumstances, and the labor of others as much as your own effort. The reputation was built inside the minds of people you never fully knew. None of these were ever exclusively, permanently, unconditionally yours. This is not a cold teaching, it is a precise one. And precision, in the Stoic tradition, is a form of mercy. The mind that understands the nature of what it holds can hold it well without gripping it to death. The unnamed Roman citizen on the pier built something real. The labor was real. The years were real. The love he had for what he created was real. The Stoics never denied any of that. They denied only the conclusion that those things completed him in some essential way, that losing them would revise what he fundamentally was. What he actually possessed, what no wave could touch, was his capacity for judgment. His ability to choose virtue over impulse at every moment the scale appeared in his hands. That, only that, was truly his. The fifth teaching: the pier is a beginning, not an end. Fear of loss is so persistent, so quietly corrosive, because it works backward through time. It does not only fear the future. It rewrites the present. It turns enjoyment into vigilance. It turns trust into monitoring. It turns love into inventory. A person who has built something valuable and is afraid of losing it often stops experiencing what they built and starts managing their exposure to its potential disappearance. The possession becomes a source of anxiety rather than a source of meaning. The thing that was supposed to add to life begins to subtract from it. The Stoics understood this dynamic with great precision. Epictetus described it as chains made of gold, no less binding for their beauty. The man who has much and fears losing it is not free. The man who has learned to hold things lightly, to be present with what is here without demanding that it remain forever, discovers a kind of spaciousness that attachment cannot produce. The pier is not a place of despair. Standing at the end of it, the salt air coming in, the water moving in the dark below, is an invitation to a specific clarity. What do I actually own in this moment? The answer the Stoic tradition returns, across every century in which it has been asked, is quiet and precise and sufficient. Your judgment, your intention, your chosen response to what the world presents. That is the weight that belongs on the virtue side of the scale. Everything else is on loan. The unnamed citizen stands at the end of the pier. The scale is in his hands, the water moves. The darkness does not tell him what comes next. But the scale does not need the darkness to lift. It only needs honesty. Weigh the impulse. Weigh the virtue. Choose the side that nothing in the external world can reach. You cannot lose what was never yours, but you can spend an entire life believing otherwise. And that belief is the source of most of the suffering the Stoics spent their lives describing and dissolving. The pier is not the end of something. It is the beginning of seeing clearly. And seeing clearly, that has always been yours. If this moved you, comment the Citadel holds below. It is our sign that you carry the philosophy with you. Subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.